The Siege of Australis. The crystal spires of Australis caught the morning light, scattering prismatic rainbows across the city's wide boulevards. It was a sight that still took Ambassador Lyria's breath away, even after serving as the head diplomat for 25 cycles. The Australan civilization had spent millennia perfecting their harmonious blend of technology and natural beauty. Their crystalline architecture wasn't just aesthetically pleasing. It served as the backbone of their energy grid, defense systems, and communication networks. Today, however, those beautiful spires trembled. Lyria stood in the observatory dome, her four arms gripping the edge of the holographic display table. Her normally iridescent skin had dulled to an ashen blue as she stared at the images before her. The space above their planet was crowded with warships, hundreds of them, dark and angular against the blackness of space. The Draconid Armada, General Toros said, his voice low. His mandibles clicked nervously as he manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the larger vessels. They've never assembled a fleet this size before. Lyria's inner eyelids flickered in distress. The Draconids were the scourge of this sector of the galaxy, reptilian conquerors who stripped worlds of resources and left them barren. For generations, the Australans had avoided their notice, protected by distance and diplomatic neutrality. That protection had now failed. "Have they responded to our communications?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "They sent only one message," Toros replied, tapping a control. A holographic figure appeared above the table, a Draconid commander, scales glinting metallic under harsh lights, yellow eyes unblinking. "People of Australis," the recording hissed, "your world has been chosen for integration into the Draconid Imperium. Your resources are now ours by right of conquest. Surrender your defenses and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in complete elimination." The message ended, leaving the chamber in silence. "They're not interested in negotiation," one of the counselors whispered. "We've seen what they do to worlds that resist." Lyria straightened her posture, her forehands forming the traditional gesture of resolution. "Then we must try harder. Prepare my shuttle. I will speak with their command directly." General Toros stepped forward, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the crystal dome's light. "Ambassador, with respect, the Draconids don't negotiate. They'll kill you the moment you board their vessel." "Perhaps," Lyria acknowledged, "but I cannot watch our world fall without exhausting every diplomatic option." 3 hours later, Lyria's shuttle approached the Draconid flagship under a flag of parley. Her heart pounded against her chest, but she maintained the composed demeanor expected of an Australan diplomat. The shuttle was escorted by Draconid fighters into a massive hangar bay. When the doors opened, she was met not by diplomats but by armed soldiers, their plasma rifles aimed directly at her. "The Supreme Commander will see you," one guard growled, gesturing with his weapon. Lyria was escorted through corridors of cold metal, so different from the organic warmth of Australan architecture. The air smelled of sulfur and ozone, the distinctive scent of Draconid biology and their weapons technology. The command chamber was dimly lit, dominated by a massive throne. Upon it sat Commander Vrax, his scaled body adorned with trophies from conquered worlds. His eyes, vertical pupils in pools of amber, regarded her with cool disinterest. "Ambassador," he said, his voice a low rumble, "you waste both our time." Lyria performed the traditional greeting gesture. "Commander Vrax, I come seeking peace. The Australans have no quarrel with the Draconid Imperium. We are willing to surrender," Vrax interrupted. "That is the only discussion to be had. Your world possesses crystalline formations with properties our engineers find useful. Your people are irrelevant to our needs." "Surely there can be cooperation," Lyria pressed. "The crystals are integrated into our civilization's very fabric. We could provide you with synthesized versions that would." Vrax rose suddenly, towering over her. "Your artificial substitutes are inadequate. We require the genuine formations, which unfortunately exist beneath your major population centers. his mouth curved in what might have been a smile. A regrettable coincidence. The realization struck Lyria like a physical blow. You mean to eradicate us regardless. Your species will be permitted to maintain a minimal population as laborers, Vrax said dismissively. The rest are unnecessary overhead. Lyria's diplomatic training nearly failed her then. The casual cruelty, the dismissal of her entire civilization as an inconvenience. It took all her restraint not to shake with rage. Return to your people, Ambassador, Vrax continued, settling back into his throne. You have 6 hours to deactivate your planetary shields and submit coordinates for our landing zones. After that, we begin systematic bombardment of your defensive installations. And if we fight? Lyria asked, though she already knew what hopeless resistance would mean. Vrax's eyes narrowed. Then your crystal cities will make a spectacular light show as they shatter. When Lyria returned to Astralis, the council was already assembled in the emergency chamber. The holographic displays showed Draconid ships moving into attack formations. They want our world, not our surrender, she reported grimly. They intend to mine the crystal formations, which means destroying our cities in the process. General Toros stepped forward. Our defenses can hold for a few days at most. The shield network will withstand initial bombardment, but once they bring their main cannons into position, how many can we evacuate? Asked Councillor Nemos, the oldest among them. Perhaps 10% of our population, if we begin immediately, Toros answered. But our colony worlds couldn't support such an influx, and we have nowhere near enough ships. Then we fight, said Lyria, surprising even herself. The room fell silent. It was unusual for the chief diplomat to advocate for military action. Not because we expect to win, but because our people deserve the chance to survive. Every hour we hold them back is another hour for evacuations. The council murmured agreement. General Toros nodded grimly, then returned his attention to the tactical displays. I'll coordinate our defense forces. We'll deploy our crystal resonators at these junctions. They can disrupt Draconid targeting systems, at least temporarily. The evacuation began within the hour. Priority was given to the young, to scientists, artists, and those carrying the cultural memory of Astralis. The rest prepared for what many believed would be their final stand. The attack came exactly 6 hours after Lyria's return, just as Vrax had promised. The sky above Astralis erupted with fire as the Draconid ships opened their initial bombardment. The planetary shields flared brilliant blue under the assault, holding, but already beginning to flicker at certain junctions. In the command center beneath the central crystal spire, Lyria watched with the council as reports flooded in from across the globe. The capital city's shields were holding, but outlying settlements were already reporting breaches. Toros directed defensive batteries with rapid-fire orders, his experience evident in every decisive command. They're deploying ground forces near the southern resonator array, an officer reported. Estimate 3 battalions, with mechanized support. Redirect the 4th and 7th defensive units, Toros ordered. Hold that position at all costs. If we lose the southern array, the entire eastern quadrant becomes vulnerable. The battle for Astralis had begun, and it was already going poorly. The Astralan defense forces were no match for Draconid military might. Their civilization had focused on art, science, and diplomacy for centuries. Their weapons were primarily defensive, designed to protect rather than destroy. By nightfall, 3 of their 7 major shield generators had fallen. Draconid dropships were landing in the agricultural districts, disgorging troops and mining equipment. The evacuations continued, but everyone knew that only a fraction of the population would escape. We've lost contact with Crystalline City, a communications officer reported, voice trembling. Last transmission reported Draconid heavy walkers breaching the central plaza. Lyria closed her eyes briefly. Crystalline City had been home to Astralis's greatest university, its museums housing artifacts from their 10,000-year history. All of it gone. General, another officer called out, anomalous reading in the upper atmosphere. Toros moved quickly to the sensor station. Draconid reinforcements. No, sir, the officer replied, confusion evident in her voice. The signature doesn't match any known Draconid vessel. I've never seen anything like it. The main display shifted to show a strange distortion forming in the space above their world, beyond the Draconid fleet. It resembled a ripple in fabric, a distortion of reality itself. Is it a weapon? Lyria asked, moving closer to the display. Before anyone could answer, the communications array suddenly activated, broadcasting on all frequencies. A voice, unlike any Lyria had heard before, filled the command center. Attention Astralan Defense Forces. This is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth Alliance vessel Praetorian. We have received your distress signal and are responding. Hold your positions. Reinforcements incoming. The command center erupted in confusion. Earth. The name was vaguely familiar from ancient astronomical records, a distant world from an unexplored sector. But no distress signal had been sent in that direction. There hadn't been time, and the Astralans had no formal contact with any species from that region of space. It must be a Draconid trick, one of the counselors suggested, a psychological tactic to make us hesitate or reveal our positions. Toros didn't seem convinced. Why would they bother? They're already winning. The sensor officer interrupted again, voice rising in excitement. Multiple objects entering atmosphere at high velocity. They're targeting Draconid positions. On the tactical display, dozens, no, hundreds, of small objects appeared, plummeting through the atmosphere at terminal velocity. They struck the planet like meteors, each impact centered perfectly on Draconid formations, landing zones, and command posts. What kind of weapon is this? Lyria whispered, watching as the tactical map updated, showing Draconid units suddenly thrown into disarray. The voice returned to their communication system. Astralan Command, this is Captain Reyes. Our first wave of orbital drop shock troopers has deployed. Please coordinate your forces with ours. Targeting data is being transmitted now. General Toros stared at the incoming information in disbelief. These aren't just impact weapons, he said slowly. They're transport pods. There are soldiers inside them. What kind of beings would launch themselves at a planet in metal coffins? Asked a council member, horrified and fascinated. As if in answer, the central view screen activated, showing a live feed from the southern perimeter, where the Draconids had established their strongest foothold. The smoke from impact craters cleared, revealing figures emerging from shattered drop pods. They were bipedal, encased in sleek armor of midnight black, with blue energy lines tracing its contours. Each carried weapons that pulsed with energy, and they moved with startling speed and coordination. The Draconid forces, caught completely by surprise, attempted to regroup. A massive armored walker turned its cannons toward the new arrivals, but before it could fire, 3 of the armored figures launched themselves into the air, propelled by jets built into their suits. They landed directly on the walker's carapace, attached devices to specific junctions, then leaped away. Seconds later, the walker collapsed as precision explosions severed its key structural points. Those are humans, Toros said with dawning realization. I've read historical accounts, but they were thought to be isolated to their star system, primitive. Lyria couldn't tear her eyes from the display. The human soldiers moved like nothing she had ever seen, a perfect blend of individual initiative and coordinated tactics. They didn't fight like the regimented Draconid forces, nor like the defensive Astralan units. They adapted instantly to changing battlefield conditions, communicated with minimal signals, and struck with devastating precision. The southern perimeter is secured, came a new voice over the comm system. This is Commander Kai Chen, Orbital Drop Shock Division. Moving to reinforce eastern approach. Toros quickly adjusted the tactical display. Divert our 3rd and 5th units to support the human forces in the east. Focus our artillery on these Draconid supply lines. Cut them off from reinforcement. For the first time since the Draconid fleet appeared, a spark of hope ignited in Lyria's chest. It was small, fragile, but undeniably present. Above Astralis, the space distortion widened, and something massive began to emerge. A ship unlike any the Astralans had encountered. Where Draconid vessels were angular and predatory, this human ship resembled a spear point, sleek, purposeful, and devastatingly elegant. Energy signatures from its hull suggested defense and weapon systems, far beyond anything the Astralans possessed. Draconid Command Vessel, this is Captain Alina Reyes of the Earth Alliance. A transmission boomed across all channels, deliberately allowing both sides to hear. Your forces are attacking a peaceful civilization. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of your aggression. On the command deck of his flagship, Commander Vrax hissed in rage. What is this? Who dares interfere with Draconid conquest? He turned to his communications officer. Identify that vessel. Unknown configuration, Commander, came the nervous reply. No match in our databases, but its energy signature, it's unlike anything we've encountered. Vrax's scales darkened with fury. No primitive interference will stop us. Target their vessel with the main battery. Show them the price of defiance. Back in the Astralan Command Center, Lyria and Tauros watched as the Draconid flagship oriented toward the human vessel. Massive weapon ports opened along its flanks, gathering energy for what would surely be a devastating strike. The human ship is holding position, an officer reported. They're not evading. The Draconid weapons fired, a concentrated beam of destructive energy that should have vaporized any normal vessel. Instead, the human ship was suddenly surrounded by a shimmering field that seemed to absorb the attack, dispersing its energy harmlessly into space. Did you see that? Tauros breathed. Their defensive technology. Before anyone could respond, the human vessel's form seemed to shift. Panels along its hull reconfigured, revealing weapon systems that hummed with barely contained power. Draconid Command. Captain Rice's voice came again, calmer now, almost pitying. That was your warning shot. Humanity has a policy of defending peaceful civilizations against unwarranted aggression. You have one final opportunity to withdraw. Vrax's response was immediate and predictable. Fire all batteries. Launch all fighters. Destroy that impudent vessel. What followed was unlike any space battle the Astralans had witnessed. The human ship moved with impossible agility for its size, evading much of the Draconid barrage while its shields absorbed the rest. Its counterattack was surgical, targeting weapons, engines, and command nodes rather than attempting to destroy the Draconid vessels outright. On the surface, the tide had turned completely. The human drop troops, now fighting alongside Astralan defenders, pushed the Draconid forces back from the cities. Their coordination was flawless, their technology clearly superior. They're not just fighting to win, Lyria observed, watching the tactical displays. They're fighting to minimize casualties, even Draconid casualties. Look how they're creating escape corridors. Indeed, the human tactics weren't aimed at annihilation, but at forcing surrender. They systematically cut off Draconid units from support, disabled their heavy weapons, and offered clear paths of retreat. As night fell over Astralis's capital, the situation had transformed. 6 hours earlier, they had faced extinction. Now, Draconid forces were in full retreat, their remaining ships disengaging from orbit. The human vessel, the Praetorian, maintained position above the capital, its presence both reassuring and somewhat terrifying in its power. Ambassador Lyria, came Captain Rice's voice over a private channel. I'd like to meet with you and your leadership. With your permission, I'll shuttle down to your coordinates. Lyria exchanged glances with the council members. This was unprecedented. First contact with an entirely new species, one that had just demonstrated both overwhelming military capability and a commitment to defending the innocent. We would be honored, Captain Rice, she replied. And thank you. My people owe you a debt we can never repay." "No debt is necessary," came the reply. "We're just doing what humans do, standing up for those who need it. We'll explain everything soon. Rise out." As Lyria prepared to meet these unexpected saviors, she wondered what this would mean for Astralis, for the sector, and for the future. The Draconids had been the dominant force in this region for centuries. If humanity was powerful enough to drive them back so effortlessly, what other changes would follow in their wake? One thing was certain: the galaxy had changed forever the day humanity dropped from the skies. The alliance forged in fire. The central crystal spire of Astralis, once on the verge of becoming a casualty of war, now served as a meeting ground between two worlds. Ambassador Lyria stood in the council chamber, her iridescent skin reflecting the ambient light, as she awaited the arrival of the human delegation. Around her, the surviving council members whispered among themselves, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension evident in their postures. "They saved us," Councillor Nemos said softly. "But what will they want in return?" General Toros, his exoskeleton bearing fresh damage from the battle, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Whatever their motives, they could have simply watched us fall. Instead, they sacrificed their own to defend strangers." The chamber fell silent as the massive crystal doors slid open. The human delegation entered, 5 figures in total. 4 wore the same advanced armor seen on the battlefield, though their helmets were now retracted, revealing faces that were both alien and strangely familiar to the Astralans. The 5th human, a woman with dark hair streaked with silver and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything at once, wore a uniform of deep blue with silver accents. "Ambassador Lyria," the woman said, stepping forward with a slight bow. "Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth Alliance vessel Praetorian. Thank you for receiving us." Lyria performed the traditional 4-handed greeting gesture. "It is we who are grateful, Captain. Without your intervention, Astralis would have fallen." Captain Reyes nodded, her expression solemn. "The Draconids have much to answer for. You're not their first victims, but if we have our way, you may be among their last." She gestured to her companions, introducing them one by one. "Commander Kai Chen, head of our Orbital Drop Shock Division. Lieutenant Imani Okafor, Tactical Specialist. Dr. Marcus Levine, our Xenobiologist and Diplomatic Advisor. And Specialist Takashi Kojima, Communications and Technology Liaison." Lyria introduced the council members and General Toros in turn. With formalities completed, they gathered around the chamber's central table where a holographic display showed real-time updates of the planet's status. "The Draconid forces have fully withdrawn from your system," Commander Chen reported, his voice carrying the precision of a career military officer. "Our scouts are tracking their retreat vector. They're regrouping at one of their forward bases approximately 3 light-years from here." "They will return," General Toros said grimly. "The Draconids do not abandon conquest so easily. They'll simply gather a larger force." "Perhaps," Captain Rice acknowledged. "But not soon, and not without consequences. The Earth Alliance has been monitoring Draconid expansion for some time. Your world isn't the first they've targeted, but your distress signal gave us the opportunity we've been waiting for. A chance to directly intervene without violating our non-interference protocols." Lyria tilted her head in confusion. "But we sent no distress signal toward Earth. We didn't even know your species existed beyond ancient astronomical records." Dr. Levine, the xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Not intentionally, perhaps, but your crystalline technology has unique properties. When your planetary defense grid activated under Draconid assault, it created a subspace resonance that propagated through realms our scientists have only recently learned to detect. In essence, your world was screaming across dimensions you didn't know existed. Our long-range monitoring stations picked up the distortion," added Specialist Kojima. "Once we isolated the signature, we recognized it as an advanced civilization under attack. Alliance protocols are clear in such situations." Captain Rice nodded. "Humanity has a complicated history. For much of our existence, we were alone in our solar system, developing in isolation. When we finally achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered other species, we discovered many of them had suffered under conquering forces like the Draconids. We made a decision then. We would not stand by while peaceful civilizations were destroyed. A noble sentiment, Counselor Nemos observed, but surely costly. You risk your people for strangers. Commander Chen's expression remained neutral, but his voice carried conviction. Freedom is worth fighting for, regardless of whose freedom it is. Today it's your world. Tomorrow, it could be ours. Lyria found herself studying these humans with growing fascination. Their biology was unlike the Astrolans, solidly bipedal with only 2 limbs for manipulation, their skin lacking the photosynthetic properties of her people. Yet there was something in their eyes, a spark of determination and adaptability that resonated with her. Your soldiers, she said, addressing Commander Chen. They fought with extraordinary skill. The way they deployed from those drop pods, it seemed impossible that anyone could survive such an impact, let alone emerge ready for combat. A hint of pride crossed Chen's face. The Orbital Drop Shock Division represents humanity's elite. They train their entire lives to do what seems impossible. Those pods are designed to absorb most of the landing force, and their armor does the rest. Still, it takes a special kind of soldier to volunteer for a combat insertion that begins with being fired at a planet. We call them the Falling Stars, Lieutenant Okafor added with a small smile. Because from the ground, that's what they look like. Until they hit, and all hell breaks loose for the enemy. General Toros leaned forward, professional interest evident in his posture. Your technology surpasses anything we've seen. The Draconids have been the dominant military force in this sector for generations, yet your forces handled them with ease. Not ease, Reyes corrected gently. We lost 27 soldiers in the battle for your world, each one a volunteer who knew the risks. The solemn silence fell over the chamber. Lyria performed a gesture of remembrance, a cultural acknowledgement of sacrifice that the humans seemed to understand instinctively. As for our technology, continued Specialist Kojima after a respectful pause, humanity developed along different lines than many species. We faced unique challenges on Earth that forced rapid adaptation. When we finally reached the stars, we brought that adaptive mindset with us. The tactical display shifted, showing the current disposition of forces around Astralis. Human ships had arrived in the hours following the battle. Medical vessels, repair crafts, and additional defensive platforms now orbited alongside the massive Praetorian. We're establishing a defensive perimeter around your system, Captain Rice explained. The Earth Alliance is offering Astralis formal protection status, if you're willing to accept it. This would include a permanent garrison and defensive installations. The council members exchanged glances. Even Lyria, who had witnessed human benevolence firsthand, felt a moment of hesitation. Throughout history, offers of protection often came with hidden costs. And what would Astralis provide in return? She asked carefully. Dr. Levine smiled, as if he had anticipated the question. Knowledge, primarily. Your crystalline technology operates on principles our scientists have theorized, but never fully implemented. We don't want to extract your resources or control your world. We want to learn from you, as equals. Before Lyria could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The tactical display shifted automatically, showing a massive energy signature emerging from subspace near the system's edge. Draconid reinforcements, General Toros said, mandibles clicking rapidly. They've returned more quickly than expected. Commander Chen stepped to the display, studying the readings with narrowed eyes. That's not a standard battle group. That's signature, Captain. They've brought a world breaker. The tension in the room became palpable. Lyria had heard rumors of such Draconid weapons, planet-killing devices deployed only in the most extreme circumstances. It seems Commander Vrax's pride was more wounded than we anticipated, Captain Rice said grimly. She tapped her wrist communicator. Praetorian, this is Rice. Battle stations. Deploy the fleet in defensive formation Delta. Prepare the Aurora Protocol. She turned to the Astralan leadership. I apologize for the abrupt end to our discussion, but we need to move quickly. A world breaker is designed for one purpose: to shatter a planet's crust and render it uninhabitable. The Draconids have decided that if they can't have Astralis, no one will. Panic flickered across the council members' faces, but Lyria maintained her composure. What can we do to help? Commander Chen answered. Your crystal resonators. They're not just defensive systems, are they? They help stabilize your planet's geological structure. General Toros nodded. The crystal network runs through the entire planetary crust. It was originally designed to prevent tectonic instability. Then we have a chance, Chen said, turning to Captain Reyes. If we can link their crystal network to our shield technology, we might be able to disperse the World Breaker's energy. Reyes nodded sharply. Specialist Kojima, work with the Astralan engineers. Lieutenant Okafor, get back to the Praetorian and coordinate our defensive screen. She looked at Lyria. Ambassador, we need to evacuate your government to a secure location. If our plan fails, I will remain with my people, Lyria said firmly. But the council should depart for the colony worlds to ensure leadership continuity. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Human technicians worked alongside Astralan engineers, interfacing their advanced shield technology with the planetary crystal network. Above, the human fleet deployed into a defensive formation, the Praetorian at its center. In the command center, now relocated deeper beneath the crystal spire, Lyria stood with Captain Reyes and Commander Chen, watching as the massive Draconid vessel moved into firing position. It was unlike their standard warships, a spherical construction with a massive focusing array at its center, designed to channel unimaginable energy directly into a planet's core. Their powering weapons, reported a human officer from the communication station. Energy buildup at 40% and climbing. Defensive screen at maximum, another reported. Crystal network integration at 87%. Reyes's expression was grim but determined. We need 95% minimum for the dispersal pattern to work. The southern node isn't sensing properly, Specialist Kojima reported from his station. The connection protocols are incompatible. I'll go, said General Toros suddenly. I know those systems better than anyone. Before anyone could object, he was already moving toward the exit, gathering a team of engineers as he went. Lyria watched him go with a mixture of pride and fear. The southern node was directly in the World Breaker's line of fire. On the tactical display, the Draconid vessel continued its approach. The human fleet moved to intercept, firing precision strikes against its escort vessels, but the World Breaker itself was heavily shielded. They're targeting us with conventional weapons, reported the tactical officer aboard the Praetorian. The World Breaker remains on course. Divert all power to forward shields, Reyes ordered. We need to buy more time for the integration to complete. The human fleet absorbed tremendous punishment, their advanced shields glowing white-hot with the energy of Draconid attacks. Several smaller vessels were hit directly, their hulls rupturing as they drifted offline. Southern node coming online, Kojima announced suddenly. General Toros has successfully recalibrated the resonance frequency. Integration at 92%, 93%. World Breaker at full charge, the tactical officer reported, tension evident in his voice. They're firing. The view screen showed the massive Draconid weapon discharging, a blinding beam of concentrated energy that struck the human defensive screen. The shields flared brilliantly, absorbing the initial impact, but warning signals immediately filled the command center. Shield integrity failing, reported an officer. Dispersal pattern insufficient. Divert emergency power from the Praetorian, Reyes ordered. Kojima, status of the crystal network. Integration at 94%. The specialist replied, his fingers flying across control surfaces. We need more power to reach critical threshold. Lyria stepped forward then, her 4 hands moving in practiced motions across the Astralon control interface. The residential districts, we can channel power from their crystal matrices. That would leave your civilians vulnerable, Commander Chen warned. They're already vulnerable, Lyria replied without hesitation. Better to risk some than lose all. At her command, the crystal networks throughout Astralis' cities began to pulse with new energy, diverting power toward the planetary defense system. On the displays, the integration percentage climbed rapidly. 95%, 96%, 97%. The World Breaker fired again, its beam even more powerful than before. The human shields buckled under the assault, allowing portions of the deadly energy to reach the upper atmosphere. Tremors shook the command center as the planet's crust absorbed the impact. Crystal network fully integrated, Kojima announced. Dispersal pattern activated. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The entire crystal network of Astralis came alive at once. Every spire, every building, every infrastructure element glowing with blinding blue-white energy. The power of the World Breaker's beam was caught in this crystalline web, channeled and dispersed throughout the planet's surface rather than penetrating to its core. Above, the human fleet seized the opportunity, converging on the now vulnerable World Breaker. The Praetorian led the assault, its main weapons finally revealed, gravity lances that bypassed conventional shields, tearing through the Draconid vessel's structural integrity. They're breaking apart, the tactical officer reported, a note of satisfaction in her voice. The World Breaker is destabilizing. On the command deck of the Draconid flagship, Commander Vrax watched in disbelief as his ultimate weapon fractured under the human assault. Impossible, he hissed. No species has ever survived a World Breaker. Sir, his second-in-command urged, we must retreat. The human technology, it's beyond anything we've encountered. Vrax's scales darkened with fury, but even he could not deny the reality before him. The World Breaker, the pride of the Draconid fleet, capable of destroying entire worlds, was being systematically dismantled by these humans and their Astralan allies. All vessels, full retreat, he ordered, his voice thick with hatred. But this is not over. The Imperium will not forget this humiliation. As the Draconid fleet disengaged, jumping to faster-than-light speeds, a cheer went up in the Astralan command center. Lyria sank into her seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Captain Rice approached, offering the sympathetic smile. Your people fought bravely, Ambassador, she said. Not just today, but from the beginning. That kind of courage, the willingness to stand against overwhelming odds, it's something humans deeply respect. Lyria looked up at this strange alien woman who had appeared from nowhere to save her world. Why did you really come? The truth, please. Reyes's expression grew more serious. Humanity spent centuries fighting among ourselves before we reached the stars. When we finally looked outward, we discovered a galaxy where too many peaceful species were being subjugated by conquerors like the Draconids. We made a promise to ourselves. We would use our hard-won military knowledge to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. A galaxy-wide protection force, Lyria mused. An ambitious undertaking. We call it the Shield Protocol, Commander Chen explained. We monitor subspace for signatures that indicate a civilization under attack. When we confirm aggression against a peaceful species, we respond. The tactical display shifted again, showing the aftermath of the battle. Draconid vessels in full retreat, human ships beginning repair operations, and the crystal cities of Astralis, damaged but still standing, their light pulsing in synchronization with the human shield technology. We have much to learn from each other, Dr. Levine said, approaching the table. Your crystal technology saved your world today. Combined with our shield harmonics, it created something neither of us could have achieved alone. General Toros returned to the command center, his exoskeleton scorched and damaged, but his posture still proud. Southern node is stabilized, he reported, but we've lost 3 secondary arrays. The resonance backlash was significant. Casualties? Lyria asked immediately. Minimal. The human drop teams evacuated most of our engineers before the crystal surge. They move impressively quickly. Captain Rice turned to address the entire Astrolin leadership. The Draconids have retreated for now, but as you predicted, they won't forget this defeat. The Earth Alliance is formally offering Astralis membership in our Mutual Defense Pact. We would establish a permanent presence here, not to control your world, but to protect it and to learn from your people. And if we decline? Counselor Nemos asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then we respect your decision, Rise replied without hesitation. We'd provide what immediate aid we can for your recovery efforts and depart when you request it. The shield protocol doesn't force protection on anyone. Lyria exchanged glances with the remaining council members. Their world had been on the brink of extinction mere hours ago. Now they were being offered a place in an interstellar alliance with a species whose technology and military prowess had defeated the Draconids with relative ease. The council will need to deliberate, she began diplomatically, but speaking personally, I believe. She was interrupted by a young Astrolin rushing into the command center, their skin pulsing with excitement. Ambassador, the crystal spires. They are resonating with the human shield technology. The harmony is producing effects we've never seen before. Specialist Kojima was immediately alert. What kind of effects? The damaged sections are regenerating, the young engineer explained breathlessly. The crystal matrices are replicating at an accelerated rate, using the energy dispersed from the Worldbreaker attack as fuel for the process. It's like the planetary network recognized the human technology as compatible. Dr. Levine's eyes widened. Adaptive crystalline structures. That's theoretically possible, but no one has ever. He turned to Captain Reyes. Elena, if their crystal technology can integrate with our shields at this level, then we've discovered something revolutionary, she finished, understanding immediately. Something that could change defensive capabilities throughout the Alliance. Lyria felt a sudden clarity. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about evolution, the natural next step for both their peoples. Captain Reyes, she said formally, I believe the deliberations may be shorter than anticipated. If your alliance truly operates on principles of mutual respect and shared advancement, then Astralis would be honored to join. The following days were filled with activity as human ships arrived carrying medical personnel, engineers, and diplomatic representatives. The Draconid attack had caused significant damage to Astralis's infrastructure, but the unexpected synergy between human shield technology and the planetary crystal network was accelerating repairs beyond anyone's predictions. In orbit, construction began on a joint defense station, a permanent installation that would serve both as protection against future Draconid aggression and as a research center where humans and Astrolins could study their combined technologies. 1 week after the battle, a formal ceremony was held in the Great Crystal Plaza of the capital city. The plaza, nearly destroyed during the initial Draconid assault, had been fully restored, its crystal formations now interwoven with subtle human engineering that made them stronger, more resilient than before. Captain Rice stood beside Ambassador Lyria as representatives from both species signed the Alliance Treaty. Above them, the massive form of the Praetorian hung in low orbit, visible even in daylight, a symbol of the protection humanity had extended to their new allies. This is only the beginning, Rice said quietly to Lyria as they watched the ceremony unfold. The Draconids will return eventually. They're too proud to accept defeat permanently. But next time, they won't face just humans or just Astrolins. They'll face us together. Lyria performed a gesture of agreement, her four hands moving in perfect harmony. Together. A concept I believe they fundamentally fail to understand. In the distance, Lyria could see human orbital drop shock troopers working alongside Astrolin engineers, their differences evident but irrelevant as they collaborated on integrating defense systems. Commander Chen was deep in conversation with General Toros, the two military leaders finding common ground despite their vastly different biologies and backgrounds. "There's something we haven't told you yet," Captain Rice said, her voice growing more serious. "Something about why the Draconids want your world so badly." Lyria turned her full attention to the human captain. "I assumed it was for our crystal formations." "Partly," Rice acknowledged. "But our intelligence suggests there's more. The Draconids have been systematically targeting worlds with certain resonant properties, worlds that could serve as communication nodes in a much larger network." "Communication with whom?" Lyria asked, suddenly uneasy. Rice looked up at the sky, her expression grim. "We don't know, but something is coming, Ambassador. Something that has the Draconids building an empire not just for conquest, but for preparation. They're armoring themselves against a threat they won't name. And you believe Australis might be connected to this unnamed threat. I believe your crystal technology might be the key to understanding it. The way it integrated with our shields, that shouldn't have been possible without years of compatibility research. It's as if our technologies were designed to work together." The implications settled over Lyria like a weight. This alliance might be far more significant than a simple mutual defense pact. It might be the beginning of something essential for both their species' survival. "Then we have much work to do," she said finally, "and I'm glad we won't be doing it alone." Captain Rice extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Lyria reached out with her upper right hand, completing the connection between their species. Above them, more human ships arrived through the spatial distortion that marked their faster-than-light technology. Specialists, scientists, diplomats, all coming to forge a new future with the Astrolans. And among them, more of the orbital drop-shock division, the human soldiers who had fallen from the sky to save a people they'd never met. In the command center of his remaining flagship, now limping back to Draconid territory, Commander Vrax received a transmission from the Imperium High Command. The message was brief but ominous. "The humans have aligned with the Crystal Bearers. Accelerate the Ascension Protocol. The Harbinger's approach." Vrax's scales paled. So it was true. The ancient enemy was returning, and now the humans, with their unexpected capabilities, stood between the Draconids and their preparations. The war had just begun, but it was no longer simply about conquest. It was about survival. On Australis, unaware of the darker currents moving through the galaxy, celebrations continued into the night. Crystal spires glowed with renewed energy, their light mingling with the illumination from human ships in orbit. For the first time in generations, the Astrolans looked to the stars not with fear of Draconid invasion, but with hope for a future secured by unexpected allies. Humanity had dropped from the skies, and the galaxy would never be the same again.